Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
Yeah, I'm here.
This is Tiki Me Productions bringing you another movie review.
This one's a big one. Like, super big.
Yes, but how big can it go as a film? Well, it's still weeks ahead to be seen.
Now, I feel as though before we get into this review, and just so it's clear we're talking about Michael, I think it's important to get some things out in front and, you know, push the elephant out the room, so to speak. And it deals with the content, or at least the situation that is pretty obvious. We are black content creators and curators. When a movie like Michael comes front and center, considering who that individual was and how important he's been in his legacy and the roots that he's laid down for not just here for our community or in America, but internationally, it's too big of something to pass up. And we would, no mistake, we would cover this film no differently as we did for other biopics such as Elvis or Oppenheimer, when it deals with those insignificant individuals in the limelight.
So, long story short, we are criticizing the film as like we always do. We see this as the film as it is, not as a film of what we wanted to see, what we expected to see, or what comes forward, because we're judging it what we saw in theaters, what was released.
Exactly.
So Michael, it is the latest modern Hollywood biopic of a significant figure. And musical biopics have always been a thing. They start picking up more heavily ever since the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, which will also like the highest, still as of right now, the highest grossing music biopic of all time. And so Michael Jackson's biopic is a no-brainer to try and capture its success, to the point that the same producer at least is on this film.
Now, of course, there were other adaptations for this story that did come to pass. We're looking towards the miniseries that came out.
Yeah, the Jacksons' American Dream, that back in the early 1990s. And I'll say, if you are going into this movie expecting
that big of a deep dive into the history
the Jacksons in general,
then that's not exactly what Michael is gunning for. This is very much a movie that is centered around Michael Jackson himself and certain key players that were crucial to his upbringing to stardom.
Even then, they don't have too much of an emphasis.
This movie was pretty much very much streamlined around specific points, but never truly goes into depth about them for more than enough couple of reasons.
And many of those reasons, even before this film was even released, is obviously because of how much of a grip that the Michael Jackson estate has on this film,
as well as certain legal situations that revolves around the persona of Michael Jackson himself.
So it is a very understandable what the filmmakers had to deal with when trying to craft a film of this degree, because a big brand is on the line.
Exactly.
A lot of legacies,
a lot of money, a lot of perception is wrapped up with this. But be that as it may, what you present will still have to be judged. So this movie primarily centers itself from the earlier age of Michael, especially with his stardom, with his family, his brothers, specifically the Jackson 5, up until his departure from the group and his beginnings in his solo career and the heights of his popularity, of his growing popularity.
Ending off with the release of the Bad album. Something that was obviously highlighted in the trailers. The movie itself, like, it was originally supposed to be more of a start to finish of his life.
But because of the way the nature of the beast runs, it definitely feels as though this is only part of his legacy shown on film.
And what we have here is a story that, at least narratively, is mostly grounded from the relationship between Michael and his father, Joseph Jackson. A story that was also depicted in the previous mentioned mini-series. Michael, but I would say that mini-series mainly tackles the generalization of the Jacksons themselves better. This one, obviously, of course, is focusing on Michael's perspective through that lens.
But again, it's a very limited perspective, especially a concept that this movie definitely addresses when we realize that the allure of what Michael Jackson was trying to create for himself limits how much you were truly able to step into those shoes.
And what the movie highlights here, there are certain narrative threads that I feel could have easily been explored much more further. The beef of the narrative that they decide to address,
especially when you look at what was Michael's relationship with his family, specifically his siblings. The relationship he definitely should have that we should have explored a little bit further between him and his father, his mother.
The film addresses the struggles of being a black artist. Unfortunately enough, this movie does not really delve into that. The Weber troubles they had being a black performer. They highlight MTV,
but they don't go into just how crucial it was for him to
even getting to that point.
Exactly.
It's a lot. Unfortunately, the film narratively does the cardinal sin
of just talking about something but never really going to showing it.
For what it does, for what it's worth, we do understand. We did a good job of highlighting Michael's genius.
Yes, especially when you look at it from not just his lyrics and the way he developed his music, but also the strides he took towards branding himself and creating his legacy, his empire. I was really actually interested in a few parts in this movie where it really does dip into his meetings that he went into and how he conducted himself and what he really wanted out of the individuals he was dealing with.
Meetings, these are some of the portions I obviously should have been even more layered out on that line. The movie is one of those musical biopic that does favor music over narrative.
There are plenty of songs, and if you know Michael Jackson's discography, you'll definitely be able to jam along with it.
We'll discuss more in depth when we go to productions, but I will say it doesn't get into the heights of being in a concert setting until the last third act.
Yeah.
So it's more like up until that point, it's more like a very brief narrative highlight reel of what people, with the general sense of what the audience may have already know about Michael. Going into this movie, I think the best way to judge this film by itself is what you know about the director Antoine Fuqua.
Exactly.
What he mainly specializes in, and which usually his films are around a very talented or very in control male figure. Very commercial films. Usually that male figure is depicted as usually Denzel Washington in the lead role, but it's understandable why Antoine Fuqua was picked in this movie.
However, I can't scratch the feeling that what this movie probably would have been like if it was handled by another director who did another biopic. Again, I'm looking at what was done with Elvis. I feel so in that movie you gain a truer, or at least a better understanding of who Elvis was and what his mindset was, his ideologies, and a lot of what really went into what made him so beloved and sought after in his time.
Because in comparison with this movie, we understand that Michael is talented.
Exactly.
He was a good collaborator. And he has some of the best music in general. But we don't necessarily get a sense on the international impact of what Michael did.
And that would have been definitely highlighted along if certain, powers that be allowed for certain aspects of his story to be told with the connections that he had.
And so what we have is more like a streamlined narrative just on a more big budget canvas is what we have. Thankfully the lead roles do even more of the heavy lifting what they have on display, what they're handled with, particularly with Michael himself, played by his very own nephew, Jaafar Jackson, who is an individual, let's get out of the way, probably no one even knew existed.
Absolutely not. I feel that this is not his first, true outing in the movie sphere. I think this pretty much is. I would happy to say that it's a decent outing in that space. I feel as though when it comes to his performance of his uncle, I truly do see Michael's presence being emphasized in his acting.
Disappeared the role. They're
totally
very he really shines near the last third act, but before that you get a sense of for an earlier first debut role, he was able to convey the internal struggles that Michael may have been experiencing in his life, and the depicting of that sense of isolation and how that may have affected his life much more later in his careers. And
then also emphasized through his own unique mannerisms, the way his inflections in his speech, the way he moved, especially his movements. I feel as though Jaafar nailed it.
And also a shout out to the actor who played even with his younger.
That's a
Juliano Valdi
did an astounding job.
I feel as though they could have actually extended a lot more of the much younger part, because you could have emphasized that, because they addressed early on the struggles of being a black artist. With that point, I feel as though it could have been easy to showcase the difficulties of even trying to get a booking gig, even when during the Jackson 5 era.
Exactly,
a long way.
I mean, certain points, like talking about his interviews with Johnny Carson and just the black artists that would have went on to influence the Jackson 5, and especially Michael himself.
Yeah. It was part of Motown.
Exactly. So I feel like do they touch on it? Yes, but they don't go nearly enough into depth about it, where it should have honestly blossomed into more in-depth discussions that this movie honestly desperately needed.
And the main other character in this movie who gets a significant character arc is Joseph Jackson, the father, played by Colman Domingo.
I feel as though this is definitely, Colman brings it. This is definitely his avenue. He's played this particular kind of character before, and he does it wonderfully. You loathe to watch him as he interacts with Michael and the other boys, and then the way his controlling nature. It's definitely out there front and center for you to experience, and Colman definitely brings it. But again, I feel as though because this is a role that he's done before, I don't know how much you could really go into depth about it, other than the mere fact that
here's the thing: we know that Joseph Jackson is even more of an infamous figure, even compared to, unfortunately, this one also how the previous miniseries kind of handled this a lot more into depth. Nia Long, who portrays the mother of Katherine Jackson, is unfortunately very lightly written.
It's very reserved towards the background. She doesn't really carry as much of a presence as you would have hoped.
The best thing that I can highlight from her talent, from her performance, is that you do get a sense that she was very much a victim of Joseph's grip.
Exactly.
Just as long as everybody else in the family. And speaking of the family,
it's very obvious that there's some absences here that honestly would have went towards making this a more character-driven piece. I feel as though by the omission of certain plot points that would have been handled if the story was allowed to be told the way it should have been, just the other characters who play the Jackson's brothers,
the other actors,
the other actors. Yes, they're there, but they're very much reserved towards the background.
I'm so surprised at how much of the say they have on this movie that they decide themselves that there wasn't going to be much of a characters in the final product.
Exactly.
Like you would think that it'll be the other way around, that they'll probably get elevated to a higher degree, but no, they decided, you know what, we're just there. We're human props.
Yeah.
The only person who gets
a slightly more developed. Not even say development, a slightly more in-depth look to extent would be Michael Jackson's lawyer, being played by Miles Teller,
and also Michael Jackson's bodyguard, played by actor KeiLyn and Durrel Jones. Two characters, at least in how this movie's emphasized, are two people who Michael trusts more than most people. That he could,
whether or not that was true or not, that's what we're given.
Yeah, his only two closest other than animals, characters, fly animals.
Yeah,
at least they highlight that aspect.
That he was like even to an extent, it's like, oh wow, we really went there. But okay, cool. Hey, it's part of this journey. It's part of the story. So why not?
A lot of what easily could have been in this movie, and a lot of that has to be talked about in the production.
Now, before we even go even further into that, I feel as though there's something this movie does, or at least was the production around this movie that we do also have to adjust. I feel as though it needs to adjust, is that I don't like it when a studio with a particular product or movie reveals certain plot points or elements that they said that could have been in the film, and then they just don't have it in there, but they say that, well, this is going to be done, showing behind the scenes aspects of stuff that it's a cut or should have woulda situation. I don't like that.
You know what, you already had the unfortunate scandal tabloids, so the media crusade against this movie,
and it's blatantly obvious.
It does not do this film any favors when you showing a whole evidence of a whole other type of cut that could have easily been just shown.
Exactly.
But as it is, what was shown in this movie on a production standpoint, this film spans around 3 decades of Michael Jackson's life, and 3 decades that I would say is mostly mostly film depicts more clearly, primarily in the 80s section.
Yeah.
The movie really starts getting together right after the
separation, I would say.
This first solo album.
Yeah.
The Off the Wall album. And after that sense, we start to see the development of Thriller, that Thriller album. That's where we start seeing a lot more of the creativity of Michael's personality. This is where throughout the film, if there's one aspect where the film should be reckoning some awards, is the makeup and hair design.
Yeah, there are parts with Jaafar's performance, because of the great makeup that was done on him, and with Colman Domingo, that you truly do see the individuals they were trying to portray. There are moments in this film, especially with the way that Jaafar acts through the makeup and the costuming, that you truly just see Michael.
Unfortunately, Antoine Fuqua is not known for his visual flair. Yeah. Unfortunately, this was handled by a more creative director. It would have been much more better to showcase that larger scope of what Michael Jackson had.
And the energy that would have been towards his performances.
Like going to that third act where we start seeing more of the that concert energy, that we start seeing more of the music, actually much more longer editions of his music is where the film starts really shining. Even with what you was certain musical songs that you would think would have had a lot more showcase. Does it really?
Yeah.
And talk about Billie Jean, where we do see Billie Jean would have been even more should have had a lot more of a significance on a narrative standpoint because of the MTV relation. You only see Billie Jean only in a very short concert section on the Motown 25.
Yeah.
I feel as though Billie Jean should have been emphasized even more further if you actually showcased that music video, because it was such a strong, it was such a important factor to just get that even on the air.
Especially when the movie itself highlights the fact that Michael really wanted, or at least tried to pioneer that concept of that element of creating music videos in it itself, especially because that was such a significant aspect towards his persona.
This movie's going to be riddled with, it's going to be played with what could have been. This movie is a lot better than what the critics say.
Yeah. It definitely deserves to be seen. I feel as though you need to walk out of this with your own perception of what you feel as though you, I mean, don't go in here with already made up, ideas of what you feel as though the movie is. Watch it for yourself and truly, digest what you've seen, and you'll come to your own conclusions.
This is like low tier good at the end of the day.
I'll watch it again. If they do continue and they end up making a second movie, there's a lot of heavy lifting they're going to have to do, and a lot of story that they're going to have to be allowed to tell.
If you expect, because he gets into, even his music gets into more societal, social issues.
Oh yeah.
With major albums afterwards. So it'd be interesting how if they decide to really do continue his story.
Fingers crossed.
Difficult review to do.
Very much so. And that was always going to be the nature of the beast. Again, we're dealing with an individual that was very controversial, that a lot of individuals had different opinions about. Whether you believed or don't believe what certain things were said, or whether or not you want to go into that, and if you wanted to see that actually emphasized in the film that was supposed to be detailing his life. Again, watch this movie, make your own conclusions.
Yes. Or if you already know about Michael Jackson, how do you compare this about other depictions on his life? What's your favorite Michael Jackson song?
I know it's Thriller for me.
Or like album? Or what? And also, speaking of music biopics, who should come next?
I'm gunning for a Prince
or David Bowie.
Thank you. Like either one. I feel as though
those two feel like the most natural. But if you
come
want
on.
that bigger scope of an audience, that Michael should be is like looks like it's getting. But yeah, music biopics, they're here to stay.
Yep.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This has been a Seeking Me Productions. And also check us on all the social media outlets to discuss more on Letterboxd, Threads, and Instagram. And also like, share, subscribe for more.
See y'all later.
See ya.